we've just done the Gennady Golovkin debate. We're now going to do the Chris Eubank Jr. debate. Your thoughts on Chris Eubank Jr., please?
Well, okay. I'll break that. I'll break it into 3 parts, if I may. Before the Billy Joe Saunders fight, the Billy Joe Saunders fight, and the Chudinov fight. Before Billy Joe, he fought very domestic level fighters and built a resume of them. I remember watching him fight Terry Carruthers, and I thought Terry Carruthers took a round, and there was an argument for another round. Lost as well, just because he just wasn't seemingly interested in fighting. So he built up a solid record. I think it was 18-0, 16-0, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Fighting people that weren't at his level, unfortunately. He then took a huge step up and fought Billy Joe, and took Billy Joe to split decision because he didn't start fast enough, which is the same thing he liked to do against certain fighters before Billy Joe, and he lost because of it. And Billy Joe, who's also an incredibly good boxer, British, Commonwealth, European champion, going to be fighting for a world title pretty soon. And so he did that. Then he stepped up against Chudinov, and I thought that was I was staying on the same level.
Yeah. Almost.
He didn't go back down. And I thought that was a good idea. I thought that there were pros and cons to doing that. But he stayed at the same level. And the first round of Chudinov was pretty competitive. They went toe to toe, eye to eye. They sort of looked into each other and they started banging. But by the 12th round, it was all Chris Eubank Jr. And Chudinov was a mess, and he was going to have lost a couple of IQ points by the end of that fight. And it was a very brave performance, but bravery got the better of him in the end. But the question is, what did we learn from that? Well, we learned he's got very good boxing skills. He learned he's quite tough, because I think, was it the 5th round, Chudinov caught him with something really quite substantial. And he got through that. I think it's for a nonsense title, so I really don't put much stock in that at all.
Yeah.
The question is now, where does he go from here? Does he defend this interim title? Or does he... I mean, who will he fight next?
He'll probably be looking to rematch Billy Joe.
Billy Joe will not give him a rematch. If Billy Joe is smart enough to accept a step-aside fee for the 2nd time, just earning money for doing nothing, he will not fight Chris Eubank Jr. That is a unification rematch waiting to happen.
Well, he's going to have to fight Golovkin if he wants to win a world title.
No, he'll fight Jared Fletcher. Or is it Jared Fletcher?
No, it's Danny Jacobs.
He'll fight Danny Jacobs.
I don't think he'll fight Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs is now a Heyman fighter. He's not going to come over to the UK and fight in a Frank Warren card.
No, he's not, but Chris Eubank might go over there.
There's no interest in... that's not...
No, but I think you're forgetting the fact that it'll be ordered. You can only be interim champion for so long.
Yeah.
It will be ordered eventually.
Well, Chudinov's been interim champion for ages without fighting Danny Jacobs.
Yeah, but that's because the Golovkin only recently became super champion to unleash a regular champion.
Yeah.
You know, because of the incredibly fucked up way the WBA does it.
What are your thoughts, though, on... I mean, I'm less interested necessarily about who he fights next. For me, he showed improvements against Chudinov. He showed discipline. He showed a jab. He showed movement. He did better than I thought he was going to do. I was impressed. But for me, again, it's the defence thing. And for Eubank Jr., concern is a work rate thing. Although he fights furiously, he looks devastating in flurries of punches. He has a tendency to take large times of a round off. They're my 2 concerns. Defensively open, can be outboxed by a slickster like BJS. And, you know, realistically... I'm not sure his work rate is high enough. So I've got concerns. Where does he stand in your sort of viewpoint?
I also have concerns, but I think there is obvious sort of born with God-given talent there. Just the skill, the ease, the poise of his combinations and things like that. He seems to be lacking sort of murderous one-punch power.
Yeah, but he's not a big puncher.
But he can do without that He can do without that if he's still hitting you very regularly, very often. That hurts just as much by the end of getting hit 10 times as it does by one big one. So it comes down to what they'll do with him. I don't know, for non-British viewers, the sort of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren thing is getting quite a bit Cold War-y. So I don't know what they're going against. A good fight for him. Who was the chap that beat Macklin?
Jorge Sebastian Highland, yeah.
It's just they'll. I think it does matter on who they put him in with next, because it'll see where his progression is. Will he defend the interim title? And will they then... I noticed Frank Warren at one point tried to claim that as a world title. You know, it depends what they try and market him as, because that will depend on how he fights as he gets on.
For me, I'd still like to see him in a domestic fight, in a 12-round domestic fight against someone with durability. And there's a few contenders out there. Spike O'Sullivan, John Ryder, Nick Blackwell. I'd like to see him in a few more fights of that nature first.
I agree. Well, yes, but... this is what I was saying. This is what it comes down to how they market him. Because they're not going to do that if they want to market him as an elite.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the middleweight division, where do you sort of see him? What sort of...
Oh, I see him below Billy. I'd see him. I'd see him below the champions at the moment, and Lemieux, Hassan,
Billy Joe, Martin Murray.
Oh, I see him below Murray. That would be a decent fight, actually. But he's young. He's still young, and there's time for him. And they just got to get him. They've got to get him regularly. If they get him regularly on terrestrial television, I think that will do him a world of good. But he's just fascinating to watch, because this step up in competition has only happened in 2 fights.
Yeah.
You know, obviously he fought for the British and Commonwealth and European champions, but that was against Billy Joe, who was still WBO #1 at the time.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been on the slow burn. He's been fighting domestic #1 contenders.
Yeah.
Immediately. So it's kind of hard to place him. I'd like to see him stay at that level. I'd still like to see him milling with the guys who are in the top 5 of the respective organisations. Do away with the silly titles by all means, but just keep, if he's going to be there, and he has to stay there. So I'd like to see him fight maybe the loser of Ndam Lemieux, maybe Highland, and I only know him because he beat Martin Macklin. You know, just keep him up there. Let's see him progress. Let's see what he's like. Does he need to take a step back down, which would be humiliating? Yeah, he's interesting because of his career progression at the point. He's left him in a strange position where he's trading on natural talent rather than necessarily worked his way up.
It's interesting. Let us know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.